Hello everybody, James here. It's Ask Dutch Anything, episode 66. A wonderful, wonderful number it is as well. I'm going to do the intro very quickly. We've got the WSI Facebook page. We have various YouTube channels, including the Stevie Richard Show, the James Romero channel, if you want to subscribe to those as well. And, of course, we've got, before we get to the semi-most important email, Dutch has 2 books, of course, and other assorted merchandise. You go to dirtydutchmantell@gmail.com, make your request there, and the other email to remember is questionsfordutch@gmail.com. If you want your question, I'm sorry, Dutch is distracting me with 2 of his WCW cards that he will sign for you if you make your request there at dirtydutchmantell with 2 L's at gmail.com. But once again, questionsfordutch@gmail.com is the email you write to submit your poser to the Dirty Dutchman himself. And here is the first one, Dutch. It is from Troy. Hello, from Tennessee. My name is Troy, and I'm an announcer in Tennessee. I helped Dutch move once, apparently. Apparently, someone helped you move once.
I know him, yes.
There you go. Please let him know. That's sort of irrelevant because you're already doing well. Also, per your conversation with Stevie, here is a reminder to ask Dutch what the temperature in Memphis was like when Lawler started doing the King gimmick. Now, Dutch, this relates to something that I said that I thought you told me. And it was when Elvis died. And then you said when Elvis died, then Jerry Lawler started ratcheting up the King character and saying, well, I was the... Tell us the whole story about when Elvis died and Jerry's reaction.
It was the week after. I mean, Memphis came apart when I was in Florida when Elvis died. I remember this. But Memphis came apart at the seams. And Elvis was no sooner in the ground that Saturday morning rolled around, and there's come Lawler out in the suits that the King wore, you know, the blousy pant leg and he dressed up like a king, and he said, everybody's sad because the King's dead. I'm not dead. I'm right here. I'm King Jerry Lawler, and put a crown on. Brother, he had heat out the yazoo. Now, in a lot of ways, it was the wrong type of heat, but Lawler didn't care. He used it. Elvis was a huge, huge wrestling fan because he would watch it every Saturday morning from, what's the name of his place?
Oh, I had it in my mind. Graceland.
Graceland. He would watch
on his
it every
3 TVs.
Yeah, he'd watch it. And you know how he died, right?
Yeah, shit himself to death on the toilet. Everyone knows that.
Yeah, he had a heart attack on the toilet. He went in there and he was taking all those pills, I guess. And he was... Now, this is something for a hell... This is a great podcast when we talk about what was wrong with him.
I was going to say, let's forget about the constipated Elvis thing.
But he died sitting on the toilet watching wrestling.
But I probably said this on the show before, but when you get in your mind's eye, because everyone's thought about this with Elvis dying on the toilet, you are imagining him in his white jumpsuit, aren't you?
No.
Of course you are.
I am not.
Well, you gold lame jacket like 55.
Maybe his crown on. He could be sitting there with just underwear and a t-shirt and the crown on. That's what I'm getting. So
when did Jerry first proclaim himself the King of Memphis? Because wasn't this the feud with Jackie? No. That was Elvis, but wasn't he feuding with Jackie Fargo some years earlier? Yeah.
Fargo was the big baby face there, and Fargo owned he was over, big time over, and he'd say Pally, but. He was over like a son of a gun. Now they had a lot of great heels there. One of them was, let me think of his name.
It was Tojo?
No, he's a blonde-headed guy, Monroe.
Sputnik
Monroe. And he probably did more for race relations in Memphis than anybody else because they had a lot of big civil rights leaders come out of Memphis. So he told them, and he did an interview on TV, and he said, I'm not coming back to Memphis till my black friends can buy a ticket on the main floor. Brother, those black people, they come out and they bought those tickets. And they love Sputnik Monroe, even though he's supposed to be a big heel. And even when I got there, still the tickets were cheaper upstairs. So, your top floor would be mostly black, and then downstairs it would be mixed. But they loved the heels. They didn't, some of the baby faces they liked, but more or less, the black people were the fans for the heels. So we played to them, and they didn't disappoint. Great fans too, by the way.
I don't think you've ever really talked about Jackie Fargo on this show, or Don. I don't think you mentioned either of the Fargos, particularly.
Oh, big stars in Memphis. Huge stars. See, I think they're on channel. They ended up their run, and they probably, I don't know how long they kept it, but they started at channel 13 in Memphis. And then I think Lance Russell was with 13, and they moved, and they went to 5, and then Lance Russell followed them over to 5. He would read the news, and then on Saturday he would do the wrestling show, him and Dave Brown, and everybody knew them. And Dave Brown doesn't do interviews.
Yeah, I know.
He doesn't do any interviews, but everybody knows him. I saw a deal the other night, the wrestling thing. What is the basketball team's name in Memphis? The Memphis what?
Grizzlies, is it?
The Grizzlies.
Why are you asking me for basketball stuff? And I know it as well.
Because I cannot remember it. I've been hit on the head so many times.
I don't know anything about basketball. No, it's Memphis Grizzlies.
But, they have a deal where they have like a wrestling show like twice a year. And I saw it the other night, and they just had one.
Mm.
It's like an intermission thing. It's like one match. And the people really like it, and because they keep bringing it back. So I saw just a clip of it, and one guy jumped off the balcony and did a big dive and on top of the guy, and the people went, wow, and they like it. So, but I think they're the only NBA basketball team that does a wrestling connection.
You're probably right. Next one, Devin from Harrisburg says, hey, Dutch and James, with all the news about Vince and his legal battles, one thing has appeared to just kind of get lost in the mix, Brock Lesnar. What should the WWE do with him at this point? It's been well over a year since he's been on the product, and as far as we know, he's still under contract. Can they bring him back at any point, or is his reputation too stained from his involvement with Vince? Love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, time fixes everything. And I don't think they said that he was involved. It just said Vince had him in mind to come over and have a little dalliance with.
Yeah, the actual accusation was, apart from the fact that he asked for and received bespoke, let's say that word, photos from Janelle Grant, is that Vince apparently promised Janelle to Brock as a bargaining chip for Brock to re-sign with WWE. We don't know how much of a joke or whatever that was, but apparently this was actually set up, Vince, Brock, and Janelle, in a restaurant to sort of ease them into it, I guess. And then Brock apparently was so drunk that he just had to go home instead. So he never actually touched Janelle, so we believe.
I don't know, but
would you bring Brock back? Do you think that's enough to keep him off TV, or eventually can you see him return?
Oh, it's enough to keep him off TV, but it's according to what Endeavor wants. Endeavor or TKO may not want him back, or I think he would have been back by now. tell you the truth. It's been a year since they took over, right?
It's been 14 months since Brock has been on TV as well.
So, and I think they're going to try to ease him in slowly if he comes back. And who knows? He may not even want to come back. He may still be getting paid for all we know. So if he's getting paid, what would be the purpose of him coming back anyway?
He's like Carmella.
So
he's been off for so long and sat home getting paid.
maybe. So, but I that sounds like Vince to me. And I think anybody who worked there knew the story anyway. But hey, I'm just working there. I'm not there for any kind of to change anything. I'm there for me. I'm there for personally to pay my bills. And whatever Vince wanted to do, I just stayed away from it. Because it's a good way to get fired.
Mm-hmm.
Going there when he's wanting to do something and he didn't want you around. So I just stayed away from him. But I always got a little bit of a bad vibe around those guys. And I just stayed away from them.
Do you foresee Brock returning, or do you think he's done?
Hard to say, but I think it needs a little more time. But I think people kind of forgot about it. If they don't do anything to Vince, I don't think they're going to do anything to Brock. Because there's not really any bad stuff that's come out about Brock, except he was considered by Vince to be a beneficiary of Vince's, generosity.
In that respect, yes. I think
and I don't think his name has been mentioned as doing any kind of crazy stuff. So I think he could come back without a lot of problems.
Next question. Dutch, how many matches could you have done in a single day in your prime? I remember hearing stories of the Midnight Express having to do 4 matches in one single WCW taping. So what was the most matches you've done in a day?
Probably 3.
All for tapings, that kind of thing?
About 3, probably. But you see, if you do 3 as a single, that's like doing a tag team. If they have a match, that's like having half a match because they don't they don't have the whole match. They're not in there for 10 minutes straight. If they go 10 minutes, they're in there for 5 straight, and then. But I've had 3. I've had 3. I broke in with 3 matches a day on Saturdays, but I would do Atlanta TV on I said 10 o'clock in the morning. We would tape it. We'd get out there about 12. You hop in the car, you drive to Columbus, Georgia for another, it was a live taping there. And you do the live taping about 3 o'clock for the Columbus, Georgia area. Then you get back in your car and you would drive to either Griffin, Georgia or Carrollton, Georgia and do a live show that night. So I've done that a lot of times. 3 matches, and you travel about, I don't know, 300 miles to do it.
This might be a stupid question, but we paid individually for all the matches.
Do what now?
Were you paid for all the matches individually, or would you basically just get paid for one day? The same if you had 1 or 3 matches?
You get paid individually.
Would you get paid, because we know with Vince, in the old days at least, with the old contracts, is that you would get paid $150 per TV taping or something crazy, and basically the excuse was, well, this is your chance to advertise yourself, almost like an infomercial, I guess. Did you get paid the same? Did you get paid the same back in the day in the 70s, regardless of if it was on TV or a house show?
No, you got paid off the house, whatever the house was.
But there you go. So that's a studio taping with about 30 people there. So would you get paid nothing?
No, you get like $50.
So you get a flat rate for TV.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did WCW, because we know in the WCW run you wrestled something like 60 odd days in a row without a day off. Did they ever try and do the thing that they did with the Midnight Express, where they would try and book you for several TV tapings in the same day just to see if they could just, I don't know, wear you out, basically, I guess?
Most of them was in one day. We would do a Wednesday night taping, I think, sometimes at a spot show. And WCW has been so long ago. You know, we would do a lot at WTBS. We'd do that. And a lot of times we would do a house show at like a live house. And that was like on a Wednesday night. They'd do it in Spartanburg, South Carolina, somewhere. You know, it's whatever they could set up. They didn't have, WCW was mostly TBS that I remember.
Next question from Hippie Steve. He says, of all the great commentators in pro wrestling, I feel like Bill Watts was one of the best. I've watched all of Mid-South TV, and his storytelling and putting wrestlers over is rivaled only by Jim Ross. I would like to know your thoughts on my opinion.
Bill Watts was a pretty good announcer. Bill Watts wasn't known for his humor, but he was known for building up a wrestler's credentials, being tough, being in shape, how he trained, what his moral outlook was, and what he expected out of all this training. He wanted to be a champion. Yeah, and he was kind of not easy to listen to, but when you listen to him, you got something like determination and conviction, because he made the guy into a tough competitor, especially if he was a babyface, a good guy. And even though the heels, he'd put the heels over too. You know, saying this guy's tough. Don't anybody take him lightly. And size was a big thing with Watts, because Watts was a big guy. Watts was about 6'5", and he was about not 300, but 275. He was he was a big guy. And so if a guy had size, and Watts didn't really want them, he didn't want the high flyers. He didn't want those. He wanted guys who really, he wanted athletes, but he didn't want, like, and you see some of the athletes, some of the wrestlers that Vince had, he gave them all kind of gimmicks, and they weren't even athletes. They couldn't even move around the ring, but he would give them a gimmick. Watts wouldn't have that. Watts, if you was a big guy, he'd give you like a gimmick like you were from the woods of Arkansas. So if you go up in Arkansas, you'd be looking for this guy, or his brother out in the woods. But
relatable, basically.
Yes, and that's what he liked, and that's what he based his territory on.
It does seem that promoters make very good commentators on the basis of they know exactly who the person is, exactly where they want the character to go. So they, more than anyone else, know exactly what's going to happen next, and therefore they can sort of nudge the story in that direction. Because, you know, Vince McMahon, I always thought was a great commentator. Because he knew exactly where the stories were going, so therefore he was in the prime sort of position to tell that story to the fans.
Bill Watts knew where he wanted it to go, maybe not down to every screw and this way, but he knew who they were going to be angling with. And say the big guy, he was gonna angle with Jake the Snake, and he said, "You know what I'd like to see? I've heard that Jake the Snake, and they had words the other day, in the dressing room in such and such a town. And, you know, I don't think there's any love lost between these two guys. And then they start talking about each other. And then pretty soon in the next week or two, you see an actual angle on TV between these two. Now they're off and running. And Jake was very easy to do an angle with because Jake understood the business, grew up in the business. So he understood the business. And Jake, when he did an interview, you believed him. So, see, Jake had that voice and he never raised his voice. And when the camera would go in on him and kept going in on him and get right into his eyes, you believed what he said because he didn't get carried away. And again, we come back to those two words we've been using, common sense. And the people believed him. So
I never understood why Jake, in his early years, just wore sweatpants with boots. I mean, was his part of his presentation always that he was a slob? Because he never seemed to wear tights. He'd always wear sweatpants, boots over the sweatpants, and then a t-shirt half the time as well.
Well, I never paid that much attention to him, but he didn't wear a shirt, did he?
Sometimes he did, yeah. Sometimes he'd wear, a sleeveless shirt as well. He looked like the most dressed wrestler wrestling in America in that day.
Yeah, but Jake had that voice. He had that snake, which made him different than everybody else. And, when Jake would come to the ring, if you're watching and he pulls out that snake, you got to say, there's something up with this guy. Mm. And he was different. But then again, I listened to his interviews very closely. And he again, common sense, you kind of believed what he said too. So he would talk you into buying a ticket. That's what and his work in the ring was very believable. And when he gave that clothesline, it was about it.
That he stole from you. Next question. We don't need to start that one up again. Rob says, why does every wrestler end up with a raspy voice after a few years in the business? Examples of Shawn Michaels, Triple H, even Vince McMahon himself. Do steroids cause this?
Well, I've never taken steroids myself. No, I don't think so.
Is it not just like screaming in loud
and not
places?
not every wrestler ends up with a raspy voice. Vince has a different voice anyway. And and I think Shawn Michaels that you mentioned, yeah, he has a weird voice too. Who else did he mention?
Triple H.
And I think Triple H just talks that way to begin with.
No, but they're a lot lower pitched and a lot more gravelly now than they used to be. Is it just screaming on a microphone for 20 years just damages your vocal cords over time?
I don't know, but I have no idea. Shawn Michaels, I think, but he kind of talks that way naturally. And I don't know what causes that. Vince has done announcing probably for as long as he's been in the wrestling business. He's probably done it for 50 years. And that may have something to do with it. So I don't know.
I'm wondering if it's people trying to imitate wrestlers they liked, and then they've just done it for so long that it's actually, their vocal cords have changed to, everyone's trying to do a Macho Man Randy Savage impression. Just all of a sudden, over the years, their voice has changed slightly towards that direction.
And I still think that Randy's voice, that's not natural, of course, but he actually pushed himself to create that voice. See, one thing about Randy, he started out as Randy Poffo. Then he went to Randy Savage. And what did he end up with? What was his last name? Finally, the Macho Man, Randy Savage. Yeah. And he worked on that voice. So, and I don't care what time you saw him, day or night, 6 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He was always Macho Man. He was always in character. I don't care if he got up and answered the door for uh, Go Dash or whatever you call that, the people that go get the stuff for you.
Mm-hmm.
Already opened the door. He's like, oh yeah, oh yeah. And he had talked so long, he couldn't talk in any other way. But I don't know if every wrestler ends up with the raspy voice just because they did interviews on TV.
Next question.
Your voice hasn't changed.
Since when? Well, I'm not a wrestler. I've never done steroids.
Yeah, but you talk.
It wears out quicker these days, I'll tell you that.
Okay.
I generally think my voice wears out more from talking so much. Next one. Mike, I'm watching Mid-South and WWF 1982 right now. It's cool watching you guys jump from territory to territory. Like in Mid-South, Andre the Giant got hurt by Killer Khan, then he shows up in the WWF. My question is... I know, would you believe? My question is, did you guys take a little time off in between moves, as in stop and smell the roses? Thanks.
Hell no.
Really? I really like that question as well. Did you not just take a few weeks off just to reset or anything? Heal your body?
Well, I guess a couple of guys did, but usually when I would just jump from one to the other. I'd finish up on a Saturday night and I'd start there on Monday. You know, it'd have to be a close territory, but I've done that.
Just time is money. Simple as that.
Well, the wrestling business went through a period where it was just about dead. I thought it was actually going to close up. That would mean that I was going to have to go out and get a job, which I really kind of hated. Because, you know, getting a job, you got to show up and you got to be on time. Then, after you get there, they actually expect you to do something. See, wrestling, you don't got to do that. You can go in and sit down in the dressing room and, how you doing? Give me a cigarette, and you smoke and you talk something else, and, you know, give me a beer, and you're on third. So you just got to get dressed, be ready for third, and go out there, and you come back and you light a cigarette, drink another beer, and go take a shower.
Yeah, and people are wondering why wrestlers' voices change.
Yeah.
Chain smoking and drinking in the locker room, man.
But yeah, some guys took a pause and some guys didn't.
Next question. Matthew asks, there's always been some good hardcore wrestling and bad hardcore wrestling over the years. The good being examples like the Tupelo concession stand brawl, Booker T versus Stevie Richards and Insurrection. That's a very weird shout-out, but that is a good match. Yourself versus Jerry Lawler in Memphis in 1983 in a barbed wire match. Terry Gordy versus Cactus Jack from an IWA Japan all-day tournament from 95 as good examples, as they were wrestling matches that told a story and made sense. Whereas bad examples are like FMW with island death matches, that infamous fire match, exploding barbed wire bouts that were common all over there as well as Big Japan doing piranha death matches. Do you think guys like Onita, Cactus Jack, Terry Funk, and other guys such as Abdullah the Butcher, including promotions such as ECW and certain match types in that category, hurt the business as much as they helped it? So too much hardcore hurting the business. What do you think?
Oh, I think so. Listen, you get hit with a piece of lumber, you get hit with a 2x4, you're going to get up. See what I mean? And you hook fireworks on the ropes or the cage, and it blows up, and you still continue. Or, I mean, it's just some of the stuff is just you can enjoy by watching it, but it doesn't mean it made the match that much better. It was just different. So Onita, you know, that hardcore stuff, I hated hardcore. I had a match one time. This guy booked me. He wanted me to come in and work with him. And I says, don't book me in no hardcore stuff. He said, yeah, man, but that's my deal. I said, well, get somebody else, because I don't do hardcore. So I got there that night and I looked on the program, like I'm a smart little student, and I looked on the program and it says hardcore match. I went up to him, I said, "What did I tell you?" "What?" I said, "You advertised a hardcore match." He said, "Yeah, man, I figure we just go out there and, we just do it a little bit and this, that, and the other." And I said, "No, you didn't listen to what I said." I said, and I didn't want to do his show anyway. I said, "I'm not going out there for you to hit me in the head with a chair and hit me with a 2x4 and hit me with this and hit me. I'm not doing it." He said, "Well, what are we going to do?" I said, "Well, this is what we do. I'll do the hardcore and you never really get a chance to do anything. But that's my deal." I said, "Well, all I got to," I said, "Did I or did I not tell you I don't do hardcore?" "Yes." I said, "Well, blame yourself." So we went out there. Brother, I hit him with everything I could find. And then when he would pick it up and try to hit me, I'd get him in the eye or something. Then I'd hit him with it. Of course, I knew how to use it, but I didn't. You don't stand there and somebody you don't know and have them hit you in the head with a chair. You just don't do that. That is stupid. Or hit me here with that 2x4. I'm not doing it. But I told him in full transparency, James, that I don't do hardcore because I didn't know the guy.
Well, what's the difference? Okay, let's go to the booking or formatting a match. What's the difference between a bad hardcore match and a good hardcore match? Because you've been in quite a number of good ones, so how do you make a good one stand out from a bad one?
Well, I didn't know this guy. I didn't know him, never worked with him, never even heard of him. So I don't know what he does. He could go like that Tommy Dreamer hardcore and just knock the living crap out of people. So I go to this town, right? And one man gang went with me. We went together. And one man gang would have been fine in the hardcore match, but they put me in it. And I forgot, it was somewhere in Arkansas or somewhere, but after I told him I don't do hardcore, he should have changed the match to no DQ. Something like that. Not hardcore, but now they expect the stuff. You can do it in a no DQ, and they can't DQ you. It's a no DQ match. But I don't know. He didn't like it. And I actually ended up putting him over. And went back to the dressing room, and the guy was crying. I said, "Thanks for the match." He went, "Man, yeah, man." And he was from that town. And he had a pretty good house in there. I mean, I didn't make him look bad. When he just picked up a chair, I'd just get him in the eyes and take it away from him, and I'd hit him with it. But one thing you don't do is, I learned this a long time ago, do not open your body up for somebody that you don't know. Because it only takes one shot. You know who hit me the hardest I've ever been hit with a chair?
It was Tommy Dreamer.
Tommy. Oh, yeah. I wanted to kill him, really. And we was in a little house, and we was in Memphis, but that damn. But see, and I hit him hard back with it, but he didn't seem to mind. You know why? Because that's the way they worked in ECW. They beat the living crap out of each other. See, I couldn't have took that place anyway.
There's another thing to sort of mention with hardcore, no DQ, whatever it is, Extreme Rules. There's all different words for the exact same thing. Is back to AEW Revolution this past Sunday, or Monday morning for me, basically, is in the Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher cage match, is that not only were there many hardcore elements to the match itself, but they kicked out of everything. So there was a brainbuster on a chair, kick out. Kyle Fletcher got stabbed with a screwdriver several times, kick out. There was a Styles clash onto thumbtacks, and it was a kick out. It's like hardcore's one thing if it leads to a win, but then these days it never ever does. It's just a transition to the next thing, then the next, and then nothing kills anyone off, and then you win with a roll up. You end up winning with a wrestling move in the end.
Yeah. What kind of match did they have?
Apparently, it was very good. We record this on a Monday. I've not had a chance to watch it yet, but apparently, it was a very good match. Apart from the fact that they just kept on kicking out, and then it just got a bit too gratuitous in that instance.
Well, see, ECW, they institutionalized the hardcore match. And hey, you can take anybody who doesn't really know anything about wrestling. They can go out there and do hardcore. They can hit you with the chair. They can set you on fire. They can put you through a table. They can do this. They can do that. There might not be any rhyme or reason to it, but they thought that was wrestling. And then it spilled over into WWE and then the other companies, and everybody wants to do that now. And that's almost, I don't say it's, at least it's really beating the crap out of somebody. In AEW, they do some things that just drive me nuts. Like they do on the clothesline, the guy will roll forward and then get up and hit him with the clothesline. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, what does that do? It doesn't even make sense. I mean, they do a lot of things in wrestling now that I don't understand. But see, I've always been a believer in story. And a lot of times, the story will get you where you need to go and draw money. Because you got to make the people think a little bit. What would you do in this situation? You know, if somebody came at you with the chair, what would you do? Run.
Mick Foley I'm sorry, I was going to say Mick Foley had a great line. I think maybe even in his first books, he sort of took some responsibility for, when he became Cactus Jack, I guess. There was some vignettes in '97 in the WWF, and they showed the footage of him jumping off his roof back in the early '83 or something like that. And he said so many people, after seeing that, it sort of like created this explosion of backyard wrestling, basically. We're all doing the hardcore stuff. And his advice is, aside from that, go to the gym. I mean, ironic saying Mick Foley saying it, but go to the gym, play a sport, get into wrestling the right way. Basically, make people care about you first, and then it will mean something when you jump off that roof, or similar.
Yes, it will. You tell the story, you get them caring for you, and then once they care for you, I mean, they kind of want to look out for you, and they're looking at life through your lens. Then if something bad happens to you, or you can create something bad, or people feel for you, that's what you want them to do. See, the other night, even watching John Cena looking at Rock, and the people were saying, no, John, don't, no. They didn't want to see it because they loved John Cena. And they didn't want to see him get with Rock, and you made them feel something. And we were talking about it earlier, that they got big money waiting on them, because now they can put any kind of story in there.
We're going to ask one more question, then we're going to shut this show down, and it's from Steve. Dutch, you were talking about in a previous episode Ronnie Garvin not being in the WWE Hall of Fame, which is a travesty. But why isn't Ole Anderson in the WWE Hall of Fame? And also, why did Ole Anderson become so bitter with the wrestling business later in life before he passed away? Thank you.
I think the reason you won't see Ole Anderson in the WWE Hall of Fame, and that's what it is basically, because he never worked there. Plus, the McMahons hate that bastard.
Yeah, Ole turned it down as well. They hate him, and he hated them.
Yeah, and he would not do anything that he perceives might help them, and they don't want to do anything that might help Ole. There's no love lost between them. And Ole don't give a crap anyway.
Well, he's dead now, so yeah.
Oh, when did he die?
I know, a year or two ago. Not too
Oh,
long
really?
ago, yeah.
I remember now. So, but he was just a mean bastard. And he got meaner as time went on. Now, with me, I had a strange dynamic with Ole. He kind of liked me, but he kind of ribbed me all the time anyway. And he would see me and he says, "You know something, kid? What? I can fire you." I went, "Yeah, you can fire me." No, he said, "Seriously, I can fire you if I want to." I said, "Yeah, okay, I believe you." He said, "No, seriously, I can tell you to hit the door, never come back." You know what? I said, "Ole, you got my vote. I'm with you, man." And then he'd just walk off after he told me that. And then he'd just walk off.
And he liked you.
And he liked me. And I did tell him one day, I said, "Ole, why don't you give me a chance out there of being a color commentator?" He said, "Oh, shut up. I don't hear that crap." And he came up to me the next week and he said, "All right, you start next week as color commentator, you and Shivani." I said, "Really?" "Yep." He said, "Try to put on something presentable. Hell, take a shower at least." He was always smart, but I always liked Ole. See, the more he ribbed you, the more he liked you. That's what somebody told me. It said he wouldn't be wasting time on you because he likes you, and he likes your humor, and he likes whatever you. I didn't say anything back to him for a while because I thought he was serious. Because, but and he's a funny guy. When you get to talking to him and get him wound up, he is hilarious. But you got to get to know him, and you won't get to know him unless he wants to know you. He won't even act funny around anybody that he doesn't like. Well, he's a weird guy, and he's a smart guy too. He was in another business other than wrestling. He was in like the wood business. He was like going out and cutting trees down. He was a pulpwood guy or something up in Minnesota, and he had a couple of companies, and he did well. So, but Ole was a good guy.
Yeah, was he always just angry just because he just hated what wrestling had become and he was just so old school ingrained? Was that just his issue with wrestling?
Well, I never really got involved in a conversation with him because we weren't that close. But I know what he was going through. He was having to go into that office every day and deal with people whose vision of wrestling wasn't the same as his. And he would just get frustrated with it. And he was going in there with Jim Barnett. You've heard stories about Barnett, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Barnett was he was good to me. He was a gay guy, but he was always very nice to me, talk to me. He would say, "Oh, Dutch, you're so hilarious." I mean, how could you get mad at somebody like Jim Barnett? But he was a good guy, and but I don't think him and Ole got along. And even though when Barnett took over, I think Ole was there, and it took a while, but finally he moved him out. And I forgot the next booker they brought in. I forgot, but he was very, very influential in the wrestling business. I have a picture that I'm going to send you, and it's an NWA convention during the 60s, and I think Jim Barnett's in it, and all the old time promoters. So you'd be interested in seeing this picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you could actually show it here.
I will edit that in, or I'll get Chris to edit that in for that. I've just one more Ole thing, and I'll shut down. Is
Okay.
This is a Ricky Morton's story. I'm totally stealing it, but he said, and I think it's Ricky and Ole. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But Ricky was wrestling Ole in a match, and Morton was just laying in punches, and Ole was like registering them, but he wasn't selling them really.
Yeah.
And after about 20 or 30 of these punches, when Ole's on the ropes, or whatever, Ricky just looks at him, and then Ricky just takes a bump on his own, like that.
Yeah.
And then after when they got at the back, it's like Ole was like, "Why did you do that?" And Ricky went, "Well, you weren't taking a bump, so I thought someone might as well."
I think he's told me the same story. Oh yeah, but
He's a top man, Ricky.
you remember the story when Ole got cut, right?
Yeah, I think we told that before as well. It's just a fan, wasn't it? A fan.
Man.
Yeah. And the old guy was banned forever, and he died soon afterwards.
Yeah. No, he couldn't come back to the matches, and he was probably close to 80, but he put about 70-something stitches in Ole, cut him from here all the way down. And it was a hawk bill, too. You know what a hawk bill is?
Yeah.
With a curved blade. And he whacked him, and he went to court. And I guess they fined him or they did something and gave him jail time suspended. But one of the things that he couldn't do was go to wrestling on Monday nights. And that's what killed him. He could not stand to sit at home and not go to the matches. So it killed him. That's basically what killed him.
On that cheery note, we're going to shut down this show then. So everybody, thank you so much.
That was a cheery note.
Yeah. What? Attempted murderer dies. Well, yeah, in fairness, that's a fairly cheery.
What town was it from?
I don't know.
Okay.
Macon.
Greenville, South Carolina.
Oh, okay.
Macon. Greenville, South Carolina.
All right, I just had a town in mind then. All right, then I'm going to go. We're going to go. Ask Dutch Anything is now concluded. We will see you again for Storytime with Dutch Mantell. That drops next Tuesday. Until then, we the people.
We the people.